So for my presentation, I did an article called Emotion Regulation Among Young Indian Women, the Role of Accessing Happy Me. James Allen was a prosperous businessman and a writer. He became of interest to mental health practitioners, and he valued something we call human equanimity, which he defined as the effect of humans having a positive, optimistic attitude. In general, he said people prefer someone who's calm, composed, and happy, as opposed to an unhappy person. And prior to his discovery, psychology historically did not really put a whole lot of emphasis on mood and people's capacity to maintain their moods. We can define emotional regulation as intrinsic and extrinsic attentional deployment in young populations responsible for monitoring, evaluating, and modifying emotions. There's also been clinical studies that show that having poor emotional regulation can be traced to depression, anxiety, and addiction disorders. Overall physical well-being also plays a role in issues such as these. There's been several emotional regulation models that have been created. With James Gross's regulation model is the most popular one, and it features 4 stages of a temporal unfolding of emotion. There's the situation that elicited the emotion, the attention to the situation, the appraisal of meaning to the situation, and finally the emotional response tendency. And this also includes behavioral, physiological, and experimental components. The main purpose of this model is to modify our emotions at each one of the stages individually and to alter emotional regulation strategies. This is kind of just a diagram of the stuff that was on the previous page. You can see the 5 different stages. So in situation selection, that involves behavioral disengagement or avoidant coping. Attention deployment is basically just attention to the situation. Situational modification is problem solving and resolving conflicts. Cognitive change is higher brain function such as memory and reason. And response modulation is basically modifying an emotion after it's generated. So there was a study done that basically demonstrates emotional regulation in action, and it was done over 150 Indian female students from New Delhi. It was conducted as a survey which asked 5 different questions. The students were asked how often they recalled a happy memory to improve mood, when they were most likely to do so, the specific type of memory they recalled, and then finally the level of social engagement they had during the process. And they were also asked how much this improved their stress levels. This is just the demographics of the candidates. All the students were born in India and had grown up there. The girls were predominantly from homes that were of middle or high class status, and they were all under the age of 21. 83% of them were Hindus, 9 were Sikhs, 5 were Muslims, 6 were Christians, and 5 had no religious preference. And these girls all attended a very prestigious university, and as a result, they had very good discipline and motivation as well as academics. There were 7 hypotheses to the study. The first one was that the participants would recall a happy memory frequently to regulate emotions, and the frequency would be greatly related to an uplift in mood after recall. The second one was the frequency of recalling a happy memory would also be significantly related to stress reduction after recall. The frequency of recalling a happy memory would be significantly related to life satisfaction overall. The participants would tend to recall a happy interpersonal memory rather than one involving personal achievement, mass media entertainment, or religious activity. The fifth one was if they were feeling happy, they would be more likely to recall a recent memory than a distant one. And the sixth one was that recalling a happy memory proved to be an effective strategy to reducing moderate and high stress. So the students were asked how much stress they had in their daily life over the course of the past week. So 12.7% said they had little to no stress in the past week. 42% reported they had some stress, and 44.7% reported a large amount of stress. In terms of dealing with stress, 17.5% reported that they coped poorly, while 67.5% reported that they coped moderately well. 48.7% reported average health, 4.7% reported poor health, and 6% reported excellent health for their age. 58.7% reported having some self-satisfaction in life, and 25.3% reported that they were very satisfied with their life. In terms of how this relates to our textbook, this relates very closely to Chapter 7, which is our emotional messages chapter, and our discussion of emotional labor, which can be defined as the process of managing and controlling emotions. We learn that it takes a lot of work and effort to manage emotions on a consistent and regular basis. We also learn that emotions have consequences, and in revealing them, you communicate important information to others. The women that were involved in this study were very intelligent, educated, and disciplined, that had learned to effectively manage stress in their lives and also at school, and to maturely manage their emotions. And the conclusion to this was that all of us deal with stress in our daily lives to some degree. Collectively, we need to learn how to effectively manage it and to cope with it, as well as learning to tackle our emotions in a healthy and mature way. And this is just my reference page.